Conservative isn't just a word, it's a movement, a way of life.
And secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity.
The Conservative Roundtable discusses the conservative movement at the local, state, and national level. Here's your host, Ralph Larigo, chairman of the Erie County Conservative Party on 1270 The Patriot.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Look, we have a bunch of interesting topics we're going through today, but if you have a topic that's important to you, please reach out, let me know. We're planning to talk about, in future shows, the big, beautiful bill. I've been talking to a CPA so that a CPA can come in here and show you how this bill actually benefits people. Obviously, you constantly hear the other side or you read the other side if you were to pick up the trash Buffalo News. We want to talk about birthright citizenships. That'll be another topic. And we're going to bring in some of the elected officials, or we're going to bring in some of the people running for office. We want to change Amherst. So we're going to bring in those running in Amherst. We're going to bring in Cheektowaga, which is changed to red, and we've got to keep it that way. We're going to bring in other towns that are important to you. But if you have an issue or a topic that you want to talk about, feel free to reach out to me. I'm easy to find at my law office. My email is simply rlarigo@larigo.com. So now we're back with James Gardner, Chris Porter. This comparison of Sean Ryan, what he's voted for, and Mandami is so striking, everybody needs to understand it. As James said, City of Buffalo voters, while the Democrats outnumber Republicans and conservatives, those Democrats, for the most part, are not socialistic Democrats. They don't believe in this far-left ideology that Sean Ryan has promoted, that Sean Ryan has voted for, that Sean Ryan has been a big part of the problem for New York State. One of the issues that I have, that I see, in 2024, there was a Senate bill 08058. That Senate bill would allow families in other states to come to New York and to have transgender operations performed in New York at your expense if they can't afford it. It also, under certain circumstances, allows 16 and 17-year-olds without parental consent to have transgender operations. That's just one of several we'll talk about right now. So, James, Chris, tell us where we are.
Well, I'll comment on the transgender bill that you just cited. And first of all, again, along the lines of extreme, Sean Ryan tries to characterize and proponents of that bill as any opposition to it as you're just a bigot. That's not the case. This idea, particularly with 16 and 17-year-olds getting transgender treatment, puberty blockers, other forms of transition treatment without parental consent, is very controversial in the medical community. In fact, in the United Kingdom, hardly a conservative bastion, they have actually banned puberty blockers in the United Kingdom for certain groups of minors because of medical concerns. So there's a legitimate medical concern on these type of issues that we should be thinking about. And the United Kingdom is an example where they felt there was sufficient medical concern that they actually have banned puberty blockers in those cases. So that's something that when we're talking about those type of cases, we're not saying James and others, we want to protect the civil rights and all the constitutional rights of anybody who is transgender. We're talking about these specific extreme cases, as you kind of outlined in this bill, Ralph, where you have a 16 or 17-year-old where New York and Sean Ryan says, hey, the parents don't even have a voice. Well, I think the parents should have a voice.
And that ultimately is the biggest problem here. It's the lack of, it's the willingness of this legislation and progressive Democrats to basically allow the government to take the place of parents. And it's not just on this issue. Let's look at education. The ability of parents to determine the best schools that their kids can go to has been dramatically eroded under the one-party rule in New York State, and something that I think is incredibly positive for the city of Buffalo, and something that I'm very proud to support are the creation of charter schools. Charter schools are the very expression of parental control, parental choice, student choice in seeking a better educational option for their kids. And it's no surprise that Sean Ryan and the progressive Democrats in Albany feel that charter schools are such an existential threat because they're so beholden to the teachers' unions, which are primarily concerned with making sure that adults have jobs, not making sure that kids get educated. And the issue here, that I think is going to play out dramatically over the course of this campaign, is that issue of school choice. Because the number one driver, anecdotally, I'm sure everybody here and everybody listening knows, if you lived in the city of Buffalo at any time in your life, it was probably when you were young and you were fresh out of college, just starting your career, whatever it is, and you decide you're going to get married and start a family. What's the first thing you start doing? Looking for homes in the suburbs. And why? It's not because you don't like living in the city of Buffalo. It's because you can't afford to send your kids to private school, can't afford to send your kids to Catholic school, and you're unwilling to send your child to the Buffalo public schools. Public education in the city of Buffalo is in a crisis. And it seems like every passing year there's a violent incident that happens. So there's legitimate safety concerns, but it's also about the quality of the education that kids are receiving, and that's why charter schools play such a key role in the educational fabric of the city, and it's why there's a lottery. That's why all these charter schools have wait lists, is because parents are desperate for other options. If they can't move or don't want to move, they need to be able to have an opportunity to make sure that their child gets educated receives the best possible education. And for many of those parents, that option is charter schools. As mayor, I will do absolutely everything to ensure that that city parents, city residents have a true option for their kid, for their children, so that they can achieve a better education and not have to. They're not destined to either a failure factory of some city school that isn't working well. And there are some public schools in the city that are very high performing, but there's no question that one of the biggest drivers of people leaving the city of Buffalo is a lack of educational opportunity, and I am proud to be a huge proponent of making sure that alternative and opportunity exists for parents.
Yeah, and I thank you, James. That's some great points. I mean, I have relatives that teach in the Buffalo public school system, and they tell me all the time the problems that are going on there. Some of these things I can't believe they're telling me, but you're spot on with the problems that exist. And I wanted to turn, just to another example in terms of voting and or position statements that Ryan has made that are along the lines of extreme. And in an interview with the Channel 2 News during the Democratic mayoral primary, each candidate was asked, what do they feel about sanctuary city policies? What do they feel about these policies? And basically what a sanctuary city is it's a city where there is no cooperation and zero with the immigration enforcement authorities. That anybody that is there illegally in the city, even if they're a violent felon, even if they have a significant criminal record and they're here illegally, the position of the sanctuary cities is we're never going to cooperate with ICE or the immigration informant. That extreme position is unnecessary and unwise, and it will lead to basically, and we've seen examples of it, where people with violent criminal backgrounds that are here illegally get to stay and roam the streets in a sanctuary city. That is not good. You don't have to, you can protect the rights of immigrants. James and others, we support legal immigration. We support fair process. You can stand for fair process and protecting the rights of immigrants without taking such an extreme position. And when Sean was asked by Channel 2 in this interview, what do you think about sanctuary cities? His answer was very interesting. He said, first of all, I don't know what a sanctuary city is. That was his first answer. I don't know what that means. Now, that's interesting.
And unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And then he went on to say, in the quote where he was talking about what he would do, he made a statement, we will never cooperate with ICE. We will never cooperate with them. And then he said, that's not really the job of the Buffalo law enforcement to cooperate with the immigration authorities. Well, I submit that particularly in those cases, if you have a violent felon that's here illegally, we should want to cooperate with immigration in those cases. Again, he looks at things through this prism of discrimination, and he sees discrimination everywhere. There is some legitimate discrimination. There's no question. But you don't have to take the extreme positions that he does, and that's the problem with Sean Ryan. Across the board, extreme, 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 he takes the radical position.
You know, conservatives get a bad rap because the way Democrats portray us, we don't have a safety net. That's far from the truth. We certainly believe that people need to be protected. We certainly have no animosity against gay people or transgenders, none whatsoever. Equality is equality across the board. My personal belief is God made us all. He didn't make mistakes. So if you happen to be gay or transgender, I don't believe that God made a mistake there. But what Democrats have done, the socialistic Democrats, is they take that issue where those people are sensitive to their issue. They take that issue and they just bring it to an extreme. They pander to those people and try to make them think that they're the only protectors when that's far from the truth. Far from the truth.
And the other thing on the sanctuary city stuff, the idea that you're going to be an elected official in the state of New York running on a platform where the local law enforcement can't talk, can't interact, can't work with federal law enforcement officers defies common sense. It's outrageous. And this has become a mainstream viewpoint. It's just and that is ultimately, bringing it back to the city of Buffalo. People understand this stuff. People understand that doesn't make any sense. Whether you're somebody who is, politically motivated and vote in every election, or whether it's somebody who eventually, votes in every other or doesn't really vote at all. The idea that you're going to prohibit law enforcement, police officers from talking to each other is ridiculous. And it's that sort of extreme example. It's that sort of contrast between, what Sean Ryan stands for and what his voting record is and where I am on these issues and what I will do as mayor. That is what gives me a tremendous optimism about November, because everywhere I go, every community I speak to, everybody has the same concerns. It's crime, it's taxes, it's livability. And on all of those issues, Sean Ryan is not the answer. And our job and our campaign will reach out to each and every one of those voters and let them know that there is somebody who in this race who stands where they stand, who believes what they believe, and will fight for the issues that they care about, which is safer streets, lower taxes, and a more livable city.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Chris. Look, voters in the city of Buffalo, when you step into that booth, you're in there by yourself. Your vote is private to you. I understand that you may certainly be a Democrat. Your parents were Democrats. You're a union individual. I get that there are plenty of Democrats, and that Democrats outnumber 6-1 in the city of Buffalo. But I've always been a believer, always, that Erie County is, the Democrats in Erie County are hardworking ethnic individuals who really want to go to work, want to do their job, and want less government interference. What you have in Sean Ryan is somebody that's totally the opposite. So whether you're a Republican or a conservative, you certainly need to get out and vote. Whether you're a blank, hopefully you see the issue clearly. But Democrats as well, you need to get out and vote. You're in a private voting booth. You cast the vote for what means something to you. And I can't believe that the record of Sean Ryan, letting transgenders, letting boys play girls' sports, abortion at the last minute, no, bail reform, don't put anybody in jail, against the police, against correction officers. I don't believe that's what the majority of Democrats or citizens of Buffalo stand for. Thank you both. When we come back, we will have Lindsay Larigo talk to us a little bit more about Erie.net. Welcome back, everyone. And now we're going to hear from my legislator and someone who I personally think, and maybe I'm prejudiced, is the best legislator we have here in Erie County, serving her constituents the best. So this is legislator Lindsay Larigo. Lindsay, how are you this morning?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me. It's always a good thing to hear more conservative talk radio in Western New York.
So, Lindsay, what I'd like to hear from you is your perspective on ErieNet. We've heard from Christine with her situation, but I know you know a lot of the background, a lot of the situation. How did this start? Polling cars, promoted this years ago. What was the cost then? What has the cost been escalating to? What is the purpose, and will it accomplish the purpose?
I think that's a great question. In 2019, this is classic Mark Poloncarz. He came out of the state of the county and said that he was going to solve a problem with a small solution. What really lacks, and to be perfectly honest with you, in my district, that's where we see a lot of what we call the black areas of the county, the lights out areas where you can't hook into internet service in this high-speed internet service. But what is needed in these communities, and these are in rural areas I grew up in, what you need is what's called the last mile. So it's not the backbone infrastructure. It's getting these providers, these ISPs, to sign on to hooking up service to connect to those last miles. So those constituents that are out there, in these rural areas that can't get that wire hooked up. What ErieNet was announced as in 2019 was a solution to this problem. It was going to be a solution and provide this last mile service to these residents that don't otherwise have high speed internet. Unfortunately, which is classic Mark Poloncarz fashion, he has changed the scope of the project as the project has progressed. He's not on the press conferences anymore. He's not in the front of it because this project is failing. At this point, over project that was supposed to be $20 million. We've spent $36. There is not a single person benefiting from this program. There's not a single person that is getting access to internet that didn't have it before. There's not a single building that's getting access that didn't have it before. Now what they're doing is they're connecting municipal buildings. They're connecting, your rec centers and your libraries to this government-provided internet service, and it is a classic case of the private sector does it better than the public sector. There's no reason that government should be trying to solve this solution or solve this problem. We have known since the beginning that private providers have no interest in hooking up and providing the last mile. They've been very explicit about that. but we're building the backbone in hopes that they do. So even when the wire is up, we don't know that this is actually going to solve the problem.
So we're not really benefiting. We're going to spend at least what is now like $36 million, and we're not going to really add benefits to city or county residents. Isn't that true?
The whole hope was if you build it, they will come, but I don't think that that's true. I think that's true in the private sector, not in government. So if you build it and they tell you they won't come, they won't come. So we're $36 million in. We don't know that we're going to get anybody to hook up to the backbone that we're creating to provide the last mile. We are wasting money. This was, every year Mark Poloncarz at his State of the County announces these grand ideas, and then he has no follow-up. He has no actual solution. Last year he said that by this time this year we would have Department of Public Works trucks running on chicken wing fuel. That's not happening because that's ludicrous. But he announces these big ideas, he gets those big press hits, and there's no accountability. And this is the same. So we can build it. We can be $36 million in with only 20 miles of line hooked up, and we still don't have the 200-mile solution that he provided. And this is where you see Mark curling up back to home and not being out there and addressing issues.
Hey, Lindsay, Bob Davis here. I thought I heard you say that the project was initially pegged at about $20 million, and now we're up to $36 million. I know initially that this project was funded through the American Rescue Fund, federal funds. Have we exceeded the federal funding for this project, and that the continued expenses that we are going to incur, are those going to come to the expense of the county and county taxpayers?
Bob, that's a fantastic question. And what I'll tell you is that when this first started, it was 2019. It was pre-pandemic, before the American Rescue Plan even existed, and we committed to this project. So the American Rescue Plan came in, which, if you remember, during COVID, you can only work outside or wear masks, etc. We were told that they couldn't start putting the line up because of the COVID pandemic, which is ludicrous for so many different reasons. We are still spending American Rescue Plan funding on this. We had mid-year budget hearings this week, which is the county legislature's ability and opportunity to ask the administration what's going on, where are we now compared to where we thought we would be, what expenses do we see that are unexpected. We had the Department of Environment and Planning before us. This has been tasked to their department. I specifically asked, once we have this up, once we are done with American Rescue Funds, which is still what we're spending on this project, what will the cost be? Because there's going to be maintenance. We have ErieNet Corporation, which is a quasi-government, quasi-private corporation that is set up. How much is it going to take to fund that? How much is it going to take to maintain that? They looked at each other, and then they looked at me and said, legislator, we don't know. So we have no idea what the long-term cost to Erie County taxpayers is going to be. Exactly. This is, unfortunately, par for the course. The new golf course in Amherst, actually, is Mark's latest undertaking. So.
Oh, you don't want to get me started on that one, or Dan Gagliardo, for that matter.
Oh, I'm happy to.
So, Lindsay, what's this $100,000 job that's been given away to a political insider for ErieNet? How does that happen?
I mean, $100,000, I think it's more than that, to be perfectly honest with you. So ErieNet has a board of directors, which we have appointed members to. So we have the minority leader serves on that board, and it's where, honestly, I saw a lot of the transparency come through. And hearing from his conversations and listening into those board meetings have been insightful. But we have Melissa Hartman, who ran against the county clerk. She was a Democrat running for county clerk. She was rewarded with this job. Actually, when she was hired for this job, the most ironic part about the whole thing is that the question she was asked was, you have no experience in, broadband, internet service, building this type of infrastructure. Why should we hire you? And she said it was because of her municipal management experience, and everything else could be hired out. So we would, get in middle managers and get in consultants to kind of complete where her maybe expertise lacked. And now you see the chief of staff of the county executive, you see her out there saying, oh my, we didn't know that this would be such a problem that we wouldn't be able to hook up to these poles that are privately owned. And that's the municipal management we essentially hired her for that she's now saying she can't handle. This is a poorly managed project with horrible goals.
Was there any competition for that job? I mean, did they interview anybody else?
I don't know that they interviewed anybody else. I know that they got more than 20 applications. Several of those applications were people who had experience building a broadband network, who were people who had experience in internet and digital experiences, which, the chairman knows that that's what I do on a daily basis. And I can tell you, I wouldn't take on this job because it's one past my handling. But to say that we didn't know that the red tape was going to be the problem, and the red tape is exactly the problem, this is the same conversation we had in 2019, and it just continues. Unfortunately, this is Democrats rewarding those that have failed in their races with jobs, and there's really nothing else to it. I mean, that's a $100,000 job there for somebody that can't do the job.
You know, Lindsay, that's just what happens. It's not based on qualifications. It's based on politics, patronage, the family and friends plan. We got the same problem in Amherst. As I said earlier in the show, there are 21 positions in Amherst, non-civil service positions, therefore patronage jobs. 21. And they're getting paid in excess of $110,000 each. That's what's going on when you got one-party rule. Like we heard James Gardner and Chris Porter, the Republican Party chairman in Buffalo earlier. The Democrats control the city of Buffalo. Well, the same is true as in Amherst. They've controlled it for 12 years. And you want to talk about patronage. 3 members of the Amherst Town Board are employees of the county. I think you know that, Lindsay. 3 of the town board members. 2 of them are commissioners, deputy commissioners with the polling cars administration. The other was, and then recently got appointed to the library board. They're all making in excess of $100,000. And think about that. Who's running Amherst? Is it Mark Poloncarz and these politically appointed positions that he gave to these individuals? Who's running Amherst? It's all about the Democrats' one-party rule, whether it's in the city of Buffalo or it's in the town of Amherst, and it's time for taxpayers to wake up and realize what's going on.
So look, Lindsay, you and I have had these conversations. If you have qualifications, then I don't care if you're a connected individual if you have qualifications. But it's qualifications that matter when these kind of jobs are given out. And unfortunately, they don't seem to matter in so many situations. So getting back to ErieNet, is there a solution to this problem?
I'll be perfectly honest with you, and I think you're coming at this as the mindset of a private sector law practice owner who, if you hire somebody, they need to deliver results. Otherwise, it's going to cost the business and the other people you employ resources. That is not the approach that county government takes, that state government takes, or federal government takes. It is about who is connected and who knows who to get the jobs. And at the end of the day, this is what ErieNet comes down to. This is a ginormous, potentially could continue to grow quasi-government facility that they can hire who they want. It doesn't matter what they're doing, but I guarantee if it's even, cleaning those offices, I guarantee you the contract is going to go to somebody who's very politically connected. So it's just creating more pockets of government that continue to grow. But I think looking at the future and what should happen to ErieNet, at this point, there is no success there. It was announced in 2019. It's 2025. The problem with how this was funded with American Rescue Plan money is we don't get that money back. But as a federal taxpayer and a state taxpayer and everything else, I pay all the same taxes as you do. I'd rather give this money back and call this project what it is, an absolute failure, and move on and find real solutions. And I don't think we'll get to that because the county would then lose that funding, but we can't reappropriate the money from the American Rescue Plan that is already going towards ErieNet. So I think you're going to continue to see funding for a failed project that will continue to create failed jobs and politically connected jobs that are only going to further burden the Erie County taxpayer.
So if at the beginning of this you were able to prioritize where $36 million would go, we have such poor infrastructure in the city, in the county, the roads, the sewer system. Where would you have prioritized the spending of this kind of money?
At the Southtown Sewer Treatment Facility, it is not the most exciting project that county residents want to hear about. It is where all of the waste goes. It all goes through the Southtown sewer facility treatment down there. We're investing a ton of money right there to upgrade, and they aren't what I would call optional improvements. They're required improvements. We could have used this money to fund a project like that needs to be done to quite literally make sure that the toilets of Erie County residents flush and that our water is clean. And that is money that we could use instead of bonding that out. But instead, we're using it to fund ErieNet. I don't think there's an appetite to... I don't think at the time at the legislature, I wasn't there, but I don't think there was an appetite to make actual lifetime investments into Erie County. And that's one that, it might not have been the best thing to advertise. Saying ErieNet and getting the headlines is a lot easier than saying I'm going to make sure that you guys have clean water and that your toilets can flush. But that's a project that we're investing millions in right now.
Unfortunately,
and that's where I would have put the money.
Unfortunately, I see that's what Mark Poloncarz has done on a repeated basis. He looks for a sexy issue. He goes with it. And it just costs the taxpayers when we have crumbling infrastructure. Look, I appreciate you coming on today, Lindsay. I certainly want you on additional shows. There's so much to talk about with regard to the county. I appreciate the time for today. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Okay, welcome. So now we're going to turn to a topic that I think is important, but many people certainly take for granted, and that's fusion voting. So we have Jerry Kassar, the New York State Conservative Chairman, on the line. Jerry's done an excellent job with the party, has grown the party. The party has been extremely successful, thanks in part to Jerry's leadership. But Jerry, let's go back to the basics. What is fusion voting?
Well, fusion voting only exists in a couple of states, and it has existed in New York State for literally decades. I mean, if I recall correctly, through some legal actions myself and Ralph were involved in, which we won, fusion voting has been upheld as a method of voting in New York State going back to the turn of the last century. So what fusion voting is this. When you vote on the Conservative Party line, and we have endorsed, say, a Democrat or a Republican, the votes get combined. So in other states, like, say, New Jersey, if you're the same candidate and you get 50,000 votes on the Republican line and 10,000 votes on the Conservative Party line, you don't have 60,000 votes. You've got 50 and 10. In New York State, and I think it's 2 or 3 other states around the nation, if you vote for a person on the conservative line that also has the Republican endorsement, the votes get combined, and you end up with a larger total. And that, in turn, in my view anyways, gives the voters of New York State more opportunity to play a role, but also to send a message with their vote. So that is technically what fusion voting is, but I think more importantly, it allows individuals who want to send a stronger message to choose a political party that has a very clear agenda.
And we do. Isn't that true, Jerry? I mean, we're the only party that I'm aware of that puts out an agenda on a yearly basis. That's what you do, right, Jerry?
That is correct. We put it out at a conference in Albany every year. It is an overlay of a generalized agenda and then with specific legislative proposals. And as long as we're on this topic, I just want to just say one other thing on agenda. 2.5 years ago, the Conservative Party updated its federal platform. We just reviewed it a couple of weeks ago because of the election of President Trump, and we felt we were going to probably need to update it. Our federal platform is like 8 or 9 pages. We discovered that 100% of our federal platform had been addressed by President Trump in his first 5, tomorrow is the 6-month anniversary, but in his first 5 months in office. 100% had been addressed by executive order or statute through some of the legislation which incorporated his executive orders. It was incredible. So we are going to be coming back later in the summer with an update of what of what still needs to be addressed and new things that we want to see occur. So, do we have an effect? Well, certainly somebody's listening. Certainly, President Trump's listening.
So we are, as I understand it, the only pro-life party. Isn't that true, Jer? We are.
Yes.
In terms of the Second Amendment, we also stand strong for your right to bear arms.
It's in our platform. It's there in writing.
So, again, we put in writing every single year what we stand for. And unfortunately, even the Republican Party, I mean, they don't. And there's waffling in the other two major parties. But our party is clear in terms of what the legislative platform is, what we believe is right, and what we believe, unfortunately, is wrong.
Yeah, I mean, and that is, I think, a unique thing, and I suspect that there are a lot of people that are more comfortable voting on the Conservative Party line, both Republicans and Democrats, simply because you know what our candidates stand for, because you can just look it up if you need to.
So here's the reality. I mean, I've done a lot of research on fusion voting. So when you look historically into the 1800s, fusion voting was the norm. Every state had fusion voting. It was really simple. To most of us, it's simply each party gets to pick the best candidate, put the best candidate on the line. If that happens to be a candidate of another party, so that's what we do. And those votes get totaled, and the winner becomes, the candidate becomes the elected official. But that is only true. The way we have fusion voting is only true in two states. There are three other states that have a form of fusion voting, but only New York and Connecticut actually have 100% fusion voting, where not only does the party choose the candidate, but on the ballot there is a separate line for that candidate, which is extremely helpful. Joe, isn't that second line means a lot, doesn't it?
And I think that's what's so important in New York for fusion voting, is that the nominee of the party doesn't just appear on the ballot one time with two party labels in their voting square. What's important, I think, in New York and for fusion voting is that individual appears on the ballot multiple times for every party nomination he or she has. And certainly we all are familiar with even judges who might appear on the ballot not just two times, but 4 times, especially if they have the cross endorsement of the more left-leaning parties. Just to if I could just mention one thing, that certainly we know that the Conservative Party is a pretty important minor party here in New York, but maybe Jerry wants to mention the other minor party that we have here in the state of New York, which has been wielding some significant influence in recent years and had some successes in this past primary election.
I mean, the other party's the Working Families Party, and they're just really an extension of the Democratic Socialists of America. I mean, I'd say, we used to come up against what was a liberal party, but that was nothing compared to the views of the Working Families Party.
I think by today's standards, the liberals might be more comfortable with the Republicans or the Conservatives than the Working Families Party.
I agree with you.
I got to seize the opportunity. I got 2 Conservative Party chairmen here, the state chairman and Erie County chairman. And I was thinking the same thing, Joe. The difference between the Conservatives and the Working Families is huge.
Night and day.
Yeah, it's huge, just like the state chairman just said. I'm the chairman in the town of Amherst, and I'm proud to say that all of our candidates for town supervisor, town board, town justice, county legislature are all endorsed by the Conservative Party as well as the Republican Party. And in contrast, all the Democrat candidates in the town of Amherst are endorsed by the Working Families Party. And frankly, you take a look at the Zoran Mondani in the city of New York and the issues that he represents, that he stands for, and he's the Working Family Party candidate as well as the Democratic Party candidate in New York. And I just think voters need to understand that these Democrats sought the Working Families Party endorsement. Did they understand what the platform was of the Working Families Party? And with the two chairmen that I have here from the Conservative Party, I would love to hear what you have to say about the platform of the Working Families Party and how it contrasts with the platform of the Conservatives.
I mean, let me just say this to you: whether it be taxes, or law enforcement, or housing, or environmental issues, the paths do not even come close to crossing. They are reflective of the most extreme views of the left on issues throughout the country. And I was just talking local issues. Heaven forbid we should start talking about anti-Semitism or the military or international affairs, because they're part of a national movement, just like the Conservative Party is part of a national movement. People should be extraordinarily cautious about who is endorsing who, because sometimes candidates, thinking they're very smart, keep their mouth shut, and then you realize afterwards, well, it was always sitting there. And people who are endorsed by the Working Families Party, those candidates, it's sitting there. They're believers too. The Conservative Party people are true believers. The Working Families Party people are often true believers too. And it's not in anything you or I would ever want to see running government.
We have taken the position in Erie County that if you decide to take the Working Families line, you cannot have our line. We are diametrically opposed. Any individual can simply go and read the Working Families platform, and you'll be shocked, not just surprised, you'll be shocked at how far to the left they actually are. It's incredible to me.
Well, you know, Ralph, again, in Amherst, the three Democrats that are running took the Working Families Party, and you talk about their platform. Take a look at Mondami, what he stands for. He wants citywide free buses. You know, he wants a full rent freeze. He wants a $30 minimum wage. You imagine what that would do to small business in Amherst, New York, Erie County? He wants the abolition of private property. These are the types of things that the Working Families Party represents, and yet when you're running for local office, in my case in the town of Amherst, the Democrats have got that line. What do they stand for? By the way, I'd like Sean Lavin to tell us, is he supporting the mayoral candidacy of the Democratic nominee, Zoran Mondani?
It's, again, anybody that takes the Working Families line is, you've got to be cautious. You've got to understand what that story is. I want to tell you one quick story. In 1960, in New York, the presidential campaign was decided by fusion voting. So in 1960, it was Nixon against JFK. Nixon won the Republican versus Democrat, but JFK, because of the liberal endorsement, won the electoral votes and became the president. Fusion voting.
That's right.
Thank you for listening to the Conservative Roundtable with Ralph Larigo, chairman of the Erie County Conservative Party. Listen to the show Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on 1270 The Patriot and on demand anytime at 1270thepatriot.com and click on podcasts.